Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone, and we're starting off with the track and field for the first time in the history of the World Athletic Championship under-20s. The Caribbean swept medals in either of the 100-meter events, with women dominating to secure the region's first medals on day 2 of the 2024 edition being held in Lima, Peru. Jamaica's Alana Reid, a 200-meter bronze medalist from Cali 2022, upgraded to 100-meter gold. In cold conditions, the 19-year-old produced a great start to run away with the event. In 11.17 seconds, she becomes the 6th Jamaican winner in the women's 100 meters at the Global Junior event, and the 3rd consecutive after Brianna Williams in 2018 and Tina Clayton back-to-back 2021 and 2022. Hodge recovered from a slow start to secure silver in 11.27, making her the first British Virgin Islands female athlete to medal at the event. You may remember Kyron McMaster being the first, while Kishonna Niles caught bronze in 11.37, the first Barbadian female to win a sprint medal at the Global Junior Showpiece. Now, there were no medals for the Caribbean in the men's 100 meters, won by South Africa's Bayanda Walaza in 10.19, Jamaicans DeAndre Daly with 10.33, and Kerrica at 10.44 finished 4th and 6th, respectively. Our track and field expert, Leighton Levy, back with us for this discussion. Leighton, let's start with the obvious 100-meter Caribbean sweep. Great look, wasn't it?
Fantastic. I mean, when you look at what leading up to the final, the 3 Caribbean women were perhaps among the most impressive, along with Great Britain's Nia Wedderburn Goodson, I think her name was, yes. But of those 4, I think, as I mentioned yesterday, I think the 3 Caribbean women looked really good, and I thought that Kishonna Niles looked good enough for a podium finish, but she had to run close to her best, which is what she did. But I think when I looked at the performance overall, I think it came down to the start. Alana Reid got a blistering start, and she just used that to her advantage for the rest of the race. Hodge didn't get out as well, but used her superior speed and speed endurance to get back into the race late and end up with a silver medal. And of course, Kishonna ran for her life to hold on for that 3rd spot over the British athlete. But overall, you expected, based on what we saw leading up to the final, you'd have to expect that the 3 Caribbean women were going to be on the podium, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, Alana Reid, Ricardo at the top of the show had mentioned that there are some people who have been a little lukewarm on her development, given the fact that she went sub-11 last year as an 18-year-old, and although she won here and she's doing reasonably well, the sensation that she created last year with her sub-11 clocking had set fans up for something probably a little more dynamic this year. Your thoughts?
Fans are slow learners. The transition from the junior ranks to the senior ranks is not a linear one. 10.92 last year, champ, that was where she was prepared to peak at 10.92. This is her first year as a pro, so the process starts all over again. She's the first year in her development as a professional athlete, as a senior athlete. This is her last year at the World Under-20 Championships. There's going to be a process where she's going to have to go through the development stages. She's going to have to get stronger. She's going to have to strengthen her stabilizer muscles and improve her technique. All of that takes work. That's perhaps a year or 2 in coming. So for her to run 11.17 this season, of course, 11.14 at the National Championships in Jamaica in June for, I think it was 5th place. This is right within the wheelhouse of where she's expected to be this season. I wasn't expecting another sub-11 time for her this season because, as I mentioned before, this is her first year as a pro, and the training is completely different now than when she was in high school preparing to peak at champs and perhaps Kerrica. The fact is that this is a different process now. The process is just beginning for her. So 11.14 and 11.17, I have no problem with it, and I think people need to start to understand that the process of transition from the junior ranks to the senior ranks is not seamless. There are bumps in the road, and it's not linear. People tend to forget that Usain Bolt had 4 very challenging years as a junior before he actually got to the level where he got silver at the World Championships in Osaka in 2007, and then, of course, exploded on the scene in 2008 until up to 2016. It takes time, and I think people need to understand that it's not a linear process, and she's a first-year pro, and this is what a first-year pro is delivering for a gold at the World Under 20 Championships.
Yeah, really, really top stuff for her. Quick comment on Adija Hodge. I spoke to her when she was a junior. Late, and I said that at the top of the show. She had times of 11.27. Many people feeling as if, if she works on that start, she's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, she's going to be. Obviously, we saw her potential from the Kerrica Games in 2022 here in Jamaica when she won the Austin Celia Award. But Adija has had a long season. She ran at the Olympic Games. She ran the nationals in the United States, the high school nationals, and she's been running the circuit at the high school US circuit all season long. This has been a long year for her. So, for her to have not her best performance here is not really surprising. I think she's still young, she's still developing, and I think the reality is that she got a terrible start comparative to the rest of the field and had to use all her know-how, all her moxie to get back into that race. And it's a credit to what she's been able to do, given that at mid-race she was out of medal contention and then found something extra in the last half of that race to get onto the podium, a silver medal no less. I think going forward, now she's going to the University of Georgia. I think over the next few years we'll see her progress steadily and become the force that I think we all believe that she can become. Because I think she's an extraordinary talent, and I think BVI has a talented youngster on her hands. So I think, barring injury or anything unforeseen, I think she has a very bright future ahead of her.
Yeah, and speaking about bright future, Kishon and Niles, picking up that bronze medal, Ricardo also mentioned at the top of the show, a part of the MVP camp.
Yeah, look, as I said before, she's been here in Jamaica. We saw the national championships, and she's been running consistently well all season long. So this is not really a surprise that she's on the podium. And I think this is yet another athlete who, given the exposure to high-quality coaching, shows what can happen. And I mean, we've seen it with Sade Williams coming from Barbados to Jamaica. Of course, now Kishana follows that pathway to success at the World Under 20 Championships. I think we've seen from her at the national championships this year, where she ran really well. And I think given where she's at in terms of her age and her development, I think Barbados has a lot to expect from her in the years going forward. I don't know where she's going to end up in terms of whether she'll be a next world beater like a Julian Alfred or somebody Baptiste from Trinidad who came through the junior ranks as well. But the reality is that what we see from her is immense potential, and I think once she continues to be under the tutelage of one of the best coaches in the world, once she stays healthy, I think the future looks bright for her and for Barbados as well. So going forward, maybe for the next World Championship in 2027, it will be Sade Williams and Kishana Niles who will be carrying the flag for Barbados.
Yeah, Leighton, a few years ago, following the Tokyo Olympic Games, I was part of a conversation in Barbados about how they move forward, and that was after Sade Williams failed to make the Olympic 400 final, but had run a lifetime best and national record at the time. I think the fastest time not to make the Olympic final that she produced in Tokyo, and it was about the way forward, and specifically speaking to whether a system needed to be developed in Barbados and Caribbean countries like Barbados, or whether it was okay to send their best athletes to Jamaica or into the US collegiate system and then hope for the best. We have seen two successes now, Sade Williams and Kishana Niles, coming to Jamaica, specifically with the MVP group. Is this the way forward for Barbados and other Caribbean countries like Barbados, or do those countries, you think, need to start finding a way to develop their own internal programs and systems to breed world-class athletes?
I think for now, sending your athletes to different locales to train is obviously the answer right now. But long term, yes, they need to put in a proper structure where they get coaches in Barbados who have the acumen, not necessarily of Stephen Francis, but certainly have the acumen to develop the young talent there. One of the things that I've consistently said over time on this show as well is that I think for a lot of countries in the Caribbean, they don't take this sport or the development of sports as serious as they should. For a country like Barbados that produced Obadiah Thompson, and and others as well, tells you that there's talent in the island, just that it's not unique to Jamaica. It's right across the Caribbean. The difference is that Jamaica has had a proper development system for many, many years now, well over 70 years. The rest of the Caribbean has fallen way behind in that regard, so they end up having to send their athletes elsewhere for development. Similarly, Jamaica as well, because look, Jamaica's throwers, jumpers, and some of our 400-meter runners, I think, need to also go abroad. I mean, this is not to disparage the work of Julian Robinson, Michael Bassler, and others, but the reality is that there's greater coaching ability for the time being in those other territories. So for the now, Barbados should send more, try to work out an arrangement where they send more athletes to Jamaica, and perhaps, not perhaps, definitely the U.S. collegiate system to develop their athletes. But longer term, they need to put structures in place that would enable them to have at least one or two coaches down in those islands who would be able to develop those specific talents that are there in abundance, but just needs the opportunity. And I think now that their athletes, especially now speaking specifically towards Barbados, now that they've seen what is possible, now it's time for them to start to put the structures in place. Maybe have consultations with MVP. I know Paul Francis has gone down here on a couple of occasions with Sade Williams, and maybe they've had discussions down there. I think after she came up from the World Championship in 2022, they had started some discussions. Not quite sure what the nature of those discussions were. But the reality is that now that they're seeing what is possible, maybe it's time to start to put the system in place to get coaches into Barbados. Barbados-born coaches as well. I'm sure there are coaches there who can be upskilled to get them to then interface with the athletes on that island, to then get them to the level where they can get more medals at the World Under-20 Championships, more medals at the World Championships, and ultimately Olympic Games. And I mean, we've seen talent at the Kerrica Games over the years. Barbados has Jonathan Jones is one among the most recent talents that we've seen. But those talents are being developed in Texas and in Jamaica now for the time being. It's time now that Barbados perhaps start to think about developing some of that talent for themselves.
Yeah, the long season continues for Adeja Hodge after the silver medal last night for the BVI. She will go in the 200 meters as well. The semi-finals for that event coming up shortly with the final set for Friday. Do you give her a better shot at gold at 200, or she's going to be in an almighty battle once again?
I think it'll be a battle, but I think if she runs like we know she can, Ricardo, she's run 22.3 indoors. She's run 22.6 outdoors. If she runs anything close to those times, which I think is possible, even though she might be running on tired legs, I think if she gets anywhere close to 22.7, 22.6, she should be able to be on the podium and on top of that podium as well. There are a couple of Americans who look rather dangerous and look potentially to be possible medalists, if not gold medalists. But given her experience and given the talent that we know that she has, it's going to be a battle. It won't be easy, but I think it's very possible that she ends up on the podium, at the top of that podium as well.
Yeah, a quick word as well on the sprint hurdler, the Jamaican sprint hurdler, Kerrica Hill, the defending champion for the women's 100 hurdles, eased through qualifying 13.18 and her semi-final round, 13 seconds flat, fastest going into Friday's final. It's been an indifferent last 2 years for Kerrica Hill, where she has, I would say, run sparingly, but I don't think it's been deliberate how few races she has contested in the last 2 years. But she really does look good at the World Under-20s this time around in the defense of her title.
Yeah, she definitely looks the class of this field. I think there are some athletes there who are in and around where they would want to be to get onto that podium. But I think I'd be very surprised if Kerrica Hill does not win the gold medal and defend her title successfully here, because I remember seeing a story that was written about her leading into the World Under-20 Championships, where she says she's going there to defend her title. Pretty much, these are my words, not necessarily the words that were quoted in the newspaper. But she goes there with a certain level of confidence, notwithstanding the fact that she hasn't competed much over the last 2 years. I think the last time we had seen her, Ricardo, was at the Racers Grand Prix 2 seasons ago when she got injured, and we haven't seen much of her since. But she's raced a couple of races in Europe, I think 12.8s and I think at 12.9s, and I think she's rounding into the form now based on what we've seen over the 2 rounds so far, that she's trending towards running a much faster time in the final. And if she does that, I think the gold medal is hers.
All right, thanks very much, Leighton Levy, as usual.
Take it easy, guys.
All right, Lance Mariah, significant achievement, the Caribbean sweeping the women's 100 meters last night. I was going through the historical results of whether regions had swept the 100s before, and the only thing I could come up with was the Pan American region, Americans and Jamaicans sweeping the hundreds, but never before it had been done by the Caribbean, not Europe, not Africa, and so a significant achievement last night.
Yeah, and you know, it's a good follow-up to what we saw happening in Paris, where Dominica and St. Lucia opened their account as far as medals at the Olympic Games would be concerned, because as you had mentioned earlier on, as we touched on it, Deja Hodge's medal is the first medal for the BVI on the women's side at the World Under-20s, and the Barbados medal, the first sprint medal on the women's side for them as well, and their first medal since Maria Burke won bronze at the 2016 Games. So a lot about that event told us that the weight of Caribbean performances not being held solely by the Jamaicans and the Bahamas of this world, but other countries coming in there and supporting the Caribbean effort.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting look into what we'll see in the future come Olympics. You know, it's just a teaser of the rising stars, and I think it's so important that we start paying, well, for those of our viewers who, you know, not track and field enthusiasts like yourself, Ricardo, but to start keeping a close eye on these athletes because they look like big ones for the future.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. All right, let's take a break on the SportsMax Zone. Still a lot to come, including a build-up to the start of the Republic Bank Men's CPL and a look back at the final of the Women's CPL, the Royals versus the Knight Riders. We'll tell you how that went.